Now to the NBA, where Luka Dončic will be sidelined through at least the end of the regular season after an MRI revealed a grade 2 hamstring injury. The Lakers did not say, though, if he could return for the playoffs. Luka was putting together an MVP-caliber season. He's yet to reach the 65-game threshold needed to win postseason awards, though. His agent, Bill Duffy, plans to challenge, according to Shams. All right, so now joined by ESPN NBA reporter Dave Mcmenamin. And Dave, we've seen the reaction of Laker fans through social media once this news came out. But what about Luka and the Lakers themselves?
Yeah, Michael, a source close to Luka tells me that obviously he's upset that he can't be out there with his teammates during this crucial stretch of the season, but he's, quote, laser focused on his recovery. Now, another team source told me, quote, hopefully we can have other guys step up. And yet another team source pointed to the timing of this injury as, of course, it's a tough thing to swallow right now, but it could be worse. They have these 5 remaining games of regular season to tinker with their lineups. Plus, they're going to get a full week of practice during the play-in tournament as that goes on, because the Lakers have already qualified for a playoff spot outright. And they're beginning that process of tinkering with the lineup as soon as possible. Tomorrow in Dallas on Saturday, they're going to have a rare practice. I can't remember last time this team had a road practice on a road trip. They're going to, get under the hood and see what they can do on the court as they prep for this stretch without Luka.
I think it's funny that we're talking about this team like other guys will step up, but one of their other guys is actually LeBron. But the thing that we've talked about as the Lakers have been doing more and more and better is the fact that LeBron has sort of embraced this new role, not being the first option, but more the third option. So now that he has to go back sort of into the old role at the age of, again, 41, how does this sort of affect him moving forward?
Yeah, Nicole, the last 2 weeks, LeBron's averaged, for him, pedestrian numbers. 15.5 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 46% from the field, 25% from 3. But that was okay because the team was winning. Now, without Luka, we're going to see what is required of him. I asked him straight up in the locker room in OKC, what will it take for you to adjust your role again? And he said, I'm not sure what the role that will be asked of me in this interim. But if he is asked to do something different, he said, obviously that will be an adjustment, but I'm willing to meet it. But, it will take some more LeBron, but I don't think we're going to turn back the clock and get LeBron James of 10 years ago. I think you're going to see more Austin Reeves in this moment, and certainly the other role players, get some more shots up Luke Kennard. Let's keep throwing lobs to Jackson Hayes and DeAndre Ayton. They're going to need this to be a committee that get them through this stretch without an MVP candidate in Luka Dončic.
Yeah, LeBron has played well, even though the numbers have been pedestrian, as you said. A couple triple-doubles in there, but what can we get going forward at this point of the season? Dave Mcmenamin, appreciate you, brother.
I think we've all heard about the Luka Dončic update, being diagnosed with a grade 2 hamstring strain, not just a grade 1, but a grade 2. And with that in mind here, what's the outlook with him? Is he, or should he be planning a return by the postseason, which is only 15 days away at this point? And simply, what's the outlook with Luka Dončic and the Lakers going forward? What's their best playoff matchup, both with and without Luka Dončic? How many more games do they have left? How many more do they have to win to maintain the 3rd seed? And what's the outlook with Luka Dončic now that he has a grade 2 hamstring strain? We're going to talk about that and go through all of that during today's video, which is presented by PrizePicks. But without further ado, again, if you have not heard yet, he has been diagnosed with a grade 2 hamstring strain. And if you don't know the difference between a grade 1 to a grade 2, it's basically a recovery standpoint. With a grade 1 strain, you're probably looking at best a few days return outlook, up to maybe 1 to 2 weeks. But then with a grade 2, again with what Luka Dončic has, that's more like a partial tear of the muscle. No, thankfully not a complete tear, that would be a grade 3, but he does have some partial tearing of that left hamstring. And at that point, the recovery timeline goes from 1 to 2 weeks at worst, to then 2 weeks at best, up to maybe 4 to 6 weeks at worst. At that point, over a month recovery outlook. And simply put, you don't know until you get there. Yes, you can test him day by day and ask him how he's feeling, which they obviously will do, but until it actually gets to that point, until he gets cleared and does some more tests, there's no definitive way to know how long it'll take for Luka to come back. Sometimes it actually could be a 2 to 3 week outlook, which would put him on track to return during round 1 of the NBA playoffs. which at this point are 15 days away. So at that point, that would be a pretty quick turnaround. Yes, it could theoretically happen. That would be the most optimistic, absolute best possible outlook with Luka Dončic recovering in roughly 2.5 weeks from that grade 2 strain. Again, not saying it's impossible, but definitely not very probable. In my opinion, that probably wouldn't be the best route. I mean, they just took a risk by bringing it back a bit too early after he tweaked his hamstring. Do they really want to double down on that again? In my opinion, probably not. Yes, again, it theoretically could be possible, but I really doubt he'll be fully recovered by that early timeline. In my opinion, we're looking at best at a 3 to 3.5 week return timeline. At that point, they would be probably halfway, if not toward the end of round 1. Given that it goes to beyond 5 games at that point, maybe he could come back, but at the absolute best, it wouldn't be or shouldn't be until the very end of round 1 of the NBA playoffs. And then if we're trying to be even more realistic, I probably wouldn't even say that he will return during round 1. At best, it would be during the early portion of round 2, which will begin during late April or early May. Again, depending on how far and how long round 1 takes for the Lakers. So at that point, obviously they have to get a pretty favorable round 1 matchup, and in my opinion, there's probably only one team that they beat without Luka Dončic at that current 6th seed, which would be the Houston Rockets in my opinion. At that point, I think it could be a possibility. Definitely would not be easy, but it could be fairly realistic. I mean, not a team that overwhelms them with size, physicality. Yes, they're obviously athletic and more athletic than the Lakers, but not comparable to a OKC Thunder, San Antonio Spurs, even a Minnesota Timberwolves in my opinion. At that point, they don't need Luka Dončic as much compared to a different team like Denver, Minnesota, again obviously with San Antonio or OKC, who they wouldn't match up with round 1, given that they stay in the 3rd seed obviously, and they don't have a possible chance of falling below the 6th seed. But at this point, I think of the likely options for the 6th seed, the Rockets are by far their best one if they're playing without Luka Dončic, which again is looking pretty likely. I mean, if we're gonna pick between Denver, Houston, and Minnesota, yes, I guess Phoenix could theoretically be in there too, but that would require them to pretty much win out and one of those 3 teams to lose out, and that's not very likely in my opinion. So again, between the 3 of Denver, Houston, or Minnesota, I am definitely going to go with Houston. Yes, Minnesota is currently playing the worst between them, but we've seen how that one can turn out, not only against the Lakers last year, but simply throughout the past 2 years in the NBA playoffs. They find a way to turn it up, and goes into a different mode at that point. Their role players like J-Mac, Naz Reid, and DiVincenzo turn it up too. I don't really want to see them again, even with the Lakers having home court, theoretically anyways. In my opinion, I would go Houston for my favorite option without Luka Dončic, or heck even with Luka Dončic. After that point, kind of a toss-up between Denver and Minnesota. I think they actually match up a bit better with Denver, but given the fact that they don't always play well against Minnesota, and last year they got beat by them in round 1, not sure I'd want a repeat of that, even with them not looking currently good at this moment, especially with the Lakers not having Luka Dončic, or at least not very likely in round 1. So at that point, it would be a toss-up, but I think I might favor Denver a little bit more here if we're going to pick between them or Minnesota in round 1. I think that it's obviously a lot less likely to happen, with Denver having a 3-game lead over them in the overall standings, and I think the tiebreaker over them too. Probably not very likely. But regardless, I'm hoping that Houston starts to get beat here. I'm hoping that Minnesota overtakes them to become the 5th seed, while the Rockets fall to the 6th seed. At that point, I think it could be fairly realistic that the Lakers beat them, even without Luka Dončic in round 1, albeit it won't be easy. But hey, even apart from that, we can't forget that the Lakers have to win out too. Maybe not quite win out, as they have a few games that they probably won't win, one of which being a rematch with OKC. I mean, barring the Thunder resting their starters and resting majority of their rotation, that's a game that I don't see the Lakers winning without Luka Dončic. After that, we have an upcoming matchup with Dallas that they definitely can win. After OKC, they match up with Golden State, who according to reports likely will have Steph Curry back by that point. So that'll be a tough one. Then they match up with Phoenix on Friday, April 10th. That could be a tough one too. And then finally finishing out with Utah on April 12th, which should be a winnable game for them. So at this point, they have 2 games left of their 5 that they should win, and definitely will be favored to win, but they have 2 that will be pretty tough. OKC obviously being one of them, then with Golden State, trying to win out and improve their spot in the standings too. You know, they're kind of locked into the 10th seed, but they're going to try to win. They're going to try to do everything they can to win. That'll be a tough game too. Then finally with Phoenix, they don't want to fall behind Portland or the Clippers to become the 8th or 9th seed, so they're going to be fighting hard for that game too. But then finally with Utah, hopefully that one's a gimme and they can take that one. But if they only win 2, I doubt that'll be enough to retain the 3rd seed, as at this point, they only have a 1-game lead over the Denver Nuggets, which is technically 2 with the tiebreaker, but still, I think they gotta win at least 3. But real quick, let me tell you about PrizePicks, America's #1 sports picking app. You simply pick more or less on your favorite players and then set your lineups. For example, here's what I got going on for later today. I got Will Riley for my first pick, having more than 11.5 points against the Miami Heat. Currently putting up over 18 points per game in his past 5. I think he'll have more than 11.5 in this one. Then for my second pick, I got Julian Champagnie having more than 8.5 points, putting up over 12 per game in his last 5, and facing off against a Denver team that's given up a lot of 3-point shots lately, so I'm pretty confident in that one. Then for my third and final pick, I got Jaime Jaquez having more than 11.5 points, putting up over 16 per game in his past 5, and facing off against a pretty bad Washington team that plays little to no defense. I'm pretty confident in this one too. So if you want to follow along with me, be sure to download PrizePicks and use code HMA when you sign up to get $50 free when you play your first $5 lineup. But now getting back to our topic, and for one final outlook on Luka Dončić, for example, looking around the NBA and with guys that had a similar injury to Luka, one of which being Peyton Watson, he suffered the exact same thing, dealing with a grade 2 hamstring strain, recently coming back from it, but then getting hurt again. And that timeline for him has roughly been over a month. Initially missing 45 days with that grade 2 strain, coming back roughly a week and a half ago, and then suffering a re-aggravation of that hamstring, now being week to week. So again, obviously it can and will be variable player to player. Some players might have a 2-week to 3-week outlook and be completely fine after that point, and some players might miss 3, 4, 5, even 6 weeks plus like Peyton Watson and not be ready to come back after that, re-aggravating it again shortly after they try to make their return, which would obviously be a very bad outcome. And not to